Today we have a familiar face for those of you who've been tuning in. We have Yafi here. Let me pop her in. There we go. And Yafi, how you say your last name?
Well, first name Yafi, last name
Yafi. Okay.
last name Yair.
Yair. Okay, great.
hmm
And so you're familiar to the crew because you've been in the when we had our sort of open mic channeling, you popped in and did a nice, awesome channeling for us. And
Thank
then
you. And also been in since then, so I
yeah,
recognize the names and the faces. Hi,
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. And also you filled in on the all shift happening now meditation, which was cool. So thanks for doing that. So familiar face, we kind of know you, but we want to get to know you a little bit more today. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to do that. First off, as people still popping in here, tell us about your journey on channeling, because I knew you when we met at the contact retreat. You, I think you casually said, "Yeah, I channel," but everybody at the retreat channels, and it's
Yeah.
not it's not a regular thing for a lot of people. It just kind of comes sometimes. I feel like I've channeled at times, but not in the sense that what you have shown us with the past few channelings you've done for us.
Yeah.
So
And I think a
yeah.
lot of people channel without calling it channeling.
Mm-hmm.
So artists, musicians, athletes, any time that you're in the zone, it's a form of channeling. So I
Absolutely.
think all of us channel all the time. It's just there are different degrees of it and different levels of awareness of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what was your journey like in becoming the channeler for the different beings you bring through, but the Hathors and everybody
Yeah,
else?
you see, I feel like my whole life, in a way, led me to this point. So, to give you an example, I had a UFO sighting when I was 8 years old in
Hmm.
Israel.
Oh, okay.
And so you could consider that as a part of my journey.
Yeah, yeah,
But, it
absolutely.
happened when I was 8, so it was so many years ago. And like everything that happens to you, you kind of put it in the back of your head and you continue with your life. And then it becomes one of the many dots um, that make the puzzle and make everything make sense. So it's hard to say when this path of mine began. So
Sorry,
your cats are all over.
he, we call this docking. He's docking into his spaceport here.
I see. Taking off soon.
Yes, yeah, we'll be. um, but yeah,
Yeah,
so
so I've always had that intuitive side, and on and off in my life, I've been like really focusing on it and harnessing it and loving it, or
mhm.
moving away from it and focusing on left brain activity, like getting a doctorate in clinical psychology, which is like as left brain as it gets.
Yeah,
But it seems like
yeah,
after having a period like that, there's always the other side. It's like the pendulum swings, you know?
yep, absolutely.
So when I was done with my doctorate, which was, I think I started my internship 11 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. That's when, yeah, it had to have been, I would say my latest spiritual awakening probably happened 2012 or so. So that's
Okay.
when the time of left brain was not put to rest, but the focus has shifted to focusing on my intuition. That's when I started meditating every day. I started giving intuitive readings, first to just friends and family to practice, and eventually professionally. And I dabbled with channeling a little bit, but it was almost like too wild for me.
Okay, too wild. Wow. What were you
Yeah,
actually channeling at that time,
yeah, but
or?
not that anything wild came through.
Mhm,
It's actually really level-headed and logical and spiritual and grounded. But I
mhm.
think the idea of channeling verbally, and also, so that was wild, one thing.
Okay.
The other thing is who you're channeling. So the whole thing of ETs, the galactic heritage, that's kind of new
Right.
to me. That's the last couple of years.
Oh, okay. Just recent. But you had your
Yeah,
sighting at age 8, so you
exactly,
did
exactly.
that should have at least stirred the pot a little bit, right?
It did, and I was interested in UFOs and ETs, but remember, I'm coming from more scientific background, and anything like galactic heritage,
Okay.
it's so unverifiable. So when I give psychic readings, you know, there are hits and there are specific confirmations, and there are verifiable parts. But let's say you're doing a reading of past lives. I usually do past life regressions, hypnosis, but let's talk about past life readings. That's so out there. There's no way to verify it. You know, I can tell you you were a king, but how are we going to prove it? So anything that was not verifiable in any way was a little too wild for me to buy into.
Okay.
And then over the last 10 years, my mind has been expanding and expanding and expanding. And at this point, there's nothing that I think is impossible. You know, if you tell me, look, there's a unicorn behind you, I would be like, where? You know, that there's nothing that's too wild.
Yeah, no, I'm right there I'm on the same path. So, well, at that time, what was too wild? I'm guessing I want to know what was for me, you know, the UFO thing. I could buy into that really easy because of my experience and also the research. But then when people started talking about mermaids and fairies, that was too wild for me. And then it took me seeing a fairy to be like, oh, fairies are real. Okay, here we go. So, and for you, what was wild? Maybe fairies were not so wild and UFOs were. How was that?
I think it was about making it personal. So it was never too wild for me to believe there is other life out there and there are ETs. Even ETs, we would call them ETs, beings that are living on our planet. So that was actually not too wild for me. But maybe the idea of communicating with them telepathically, maybe that idea that the channeling is valid source of information. But again, there's the personal, the impersonal. So I would read Seth Speaks and my mind would be blown. But it never occurred to me to channel, to be a channeler and to trust that, you know, it's different when it's far away.
Sure.
When it's somebody else, when it's stories about whatever, and when it's you, and when it's really real, and when it's time to believe it or act on it or start changing your worldview based on it, it becomes bigger, different.
Yeah.
And that's the wild part.
I got you. Yeah, I've been down those wild paths. Still am. You know, today this is what we're doing. You know, we're still exploring and going down some wild stuff. Finding out there's lots of wild stuff out there. But you know, the dots start to connect when you start expanding and not limiting your belief systems based on any one specific thing. You start seeing a lot of things make actually more sense when you sort of accept it all as a possibility. The dots connect, for at least for me in my research.
Yeah, and I found in my life that often you first have to take the leap of faith, or you first have to take the leap of faith in some way, and then things start happening. So I used to think it's the other way around, right? You need proof to believe. But now I see it's completely different because, I mean, it's good to be a skeptic. It's good to have an open mind and a questioning mind. But there is a difference somewhere in that gray line between being a skeptic believer or being a cynic that discounts everything. There's a line somewhere there. And if you cross that line and you're a believer with a questioning mind, but you truly believe, you're truly open, things will happen that are just truly magical. That, you know, there is no logical explanation to the synchronicities and things that are happening and things that are actually happening in physical world. It's just amazing. But in my personal life, I really had to take that leap of faith first.
Well,
and I'm
it's
sure,
like Bashar says all the time, believing is seeing, not seeing is believing, right? You have to flip that around. So that short phrase has always been super key in understanding all this stuff. So
absolutely.
So was there having the UFO sighting, but in you said you flip-flop between going back from the research, you know, left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain. What was the big moment that you're like, okay, I'm all in?
Well, what really convinced me, so there are different things. I'm trying to remember if the experiences with my mom crossed over 11 years ago, and that was a huge shift for me. But I tried to remember if it was before or after. I bet it was before. I was reading up on children that have past life memories.
Right.
And I was looking at Dr. Stevenson's work, and he verified thousands of cases, and that just blew my mind. And I focused on a specific case. A lot of people know it, James Langer, if I'm saying the names correctly. He was a child that was also died in past life in a crash, and it was the pilot of an airplane.
Okay, the World War II.
Yes,
kid.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And all his he knew all his buddies from the
war.
retirement
Yeah.
club, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that.
So I looked into this case and I said, wow, it really has enough. It's out there in the public's eye. If it can be not disputed, what's the word? Debunked. I'm sure
Debunked.
that, I was looking at debunk. If it could be debunked, if it's not sure, I'm sure people have done it. So I started really researching. And yes, many people tried to debunk it. Nobody was successful.
Yeah.
And that kind of blew my mind. For me, that was the straw, because it wasn't the only thing, but it was a straw that broke the camel's skepticism. Because
what was the name of the kid again, or
James
the doctor?
James.
There's some TV shows. Landinger and
definitely James.
Okay, and what was the doctor that did that work?
Stevenson, Ian Stevenson.
Okay, just to have that.
So that blew my mind, because that convinced my left brain logical mind that it's real. And if reincarnation is real, then then we have souls. And if souls are real, what else? I mean, that just blew my mind, and it just jumped me over to the believer side. And it's a relatively small thing, but once that happened, first of all, I dove into it. So I started meditating every day. I started reading about spiritual matters, consciousness, mediumship. So I just started reading a lot, and I totally dove into it. And then my mom died very, very suddenly from cancer. And I would say that's probably where my intuition fully kicked in. I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to depress people. But she was living in Israel, and I was completing my doctorate. And my intuition told me I need to go. I woke up one day and I had the knowing, in 1 month, my mom is going to die. And I woke up the following day with the same knowing. I woke up the third day with the same knowing. And that was before I was really tapped into my intuition. I was like a new believer. I didn't even know what I believed yet. But 3 days in a row, I woke up with that knowing. And then the third day I said, I'm buying my tickets, my flight to Israel. And my parents were like, my mom was still talking and everything. Nobody knew it was happening that fast. She was not fully diagnosed yet. Like it was happening so fast. But my intuition was so clear. So I booked my ticket to Israel in the middle of a semester. I'm like, I'm going to Israel. And I even planned the dates that I'll be with my mom in the last 2 weeks of her life. Then I'll be with my dad the week after she dies to help him with all their arrangement. And, we're Jewish, so there's a shiva. And then I went back to complete my semester. And it happened on the date that I knew. It happened exactly as I had known. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be with my mom, who was my best friend. We were really, really close. I wouldn't be with her in the last 2 weeks of her life. I wouldn't be able to help my dad. I cannot even imagine how I would feel about it and how my life would have unfolded if I didn't follow that extremely strong gut knowing and went for it. And that changed everything for me. And after she died, I could feel her so clearly for a few days. She was like bugging me because she was so present. It was unbelievable. And then I guess she started her transition, or whatever you call it, but she started fading away from this very physical presence, which was good because it was overbearing. But then when she left, I'm like, Mom, come back. But then I started playing with lucid dreaming and having visitations with her. So that really just started my spiritual awakening and intentionally developing my intuition. I knew immediately that was my gateway, my connection. And that's what I focused on. And it's been about 11 years.
Did she come in with any specific messages, or was it just you guys hanging out?
The first 2 years, it was just us hanging out. And it was mostly initiated by me.
Hmm.
And after 2 years, I was at the Monroe Institute. The veil there is
Okay.
very thin, so she always visits me when I'm there. So I
Oh,
was
okay.
at the Monroe Institute, and all of a sudden, she got me in an out-of-body state, and it was totally created by her. I was in the kitchen we grew up in Israel, and there were plants all around. There was like acoustic guitar music playing, and I'm like, like what is going on? Like it was so weird. And it was
Wow.
all created by my mom, which I wasn't used to. When she came to me, and for the first time ever, she spoke to me in that state telepathically, and I heard her voice in my head in English. Now
Hmm.
she speaks Hebrew, but I think in English. So that was like how
Interesting. Was
pure
the
the
first time
telepathy.
was the
Yes, it
first
was the
time
first time.
you could hear her voice in English?
Yeah.
Oh,
And she
wow.
was speaking to me. She was initiating everything. And she was speaking to me in English in my head. And she said, yeah, it took me these 2 years. I'm sorry. It took me all this time to be able to communicate this clearly. And I don't remember if there was any other message. It was another time she came back with a message about my dad just to help him through the transition.
Hmm.
But most of the messages from her are not informational. It's about the emotional connection. Like I said, she really was my best friend. We're so close. So her first visitation ever, she just appeared in this ball of light. I just saw her upper body and she came closer. And I said, Mom, it's really you, in Hebrew actually. And she laughed. She said, yes, what, you don't recognize me? And then we hugged and it was physical. I could feel her skin. I could feel her
Wow.
bones. And oh, and that
Wow.
night I went to sleep asking for a hug because I missed
Yeah.
her so much.
Mm.
And we hugged and it was very, very visceral. And then she just stepped back and then she faded away. And then I was brought back to my body. And it was so vivid. And that was her first visitation. And I think
Wow.
that was just a few days after she died.
And was there a any kind of confirmation like, oh, I'm okay, and now I understand things better now, kind of thing from
Yes,
her?
and I think that came later on when I said
Okay.
she came back 2 years later. I
Okay.
think that's when she had her stuff together and she could enough that she could create that astral place for us to meet and to call on me and to bring me there. um, I
But
guess
you
I would
also
say
had
it
to
took
have your
her,
stuff together too, for that to happen, I'm sure.
but before that I initiated
Right.
most of the contact, and it's almost like she was a little out of phase, or they had to be really short because it was unstable. That was different. That time was different, and she took the accountability for that, and she said, now I can do this.
Oh,
So it
interesting.
seems like it took her that long to maybe have better control of her faculties, of her energy.
Right, right. So it's even on the other side, there's still a learning curve, so to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And she was a
Interesting.
skeptical. I mean, she was very left brain. She was a very curious and intelligent woman, but she called all of this nonsense.
Mm,
With
okay.
little exceptions of bits and pieces, like we were connected telepathically. So she would call me and say, you'll never know who I just met. And I would tell her. And that would just like, she would just not know what to do with that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned the Monroe Institute, and that's what sparked my some of our conversations back at the Lisa Royale retreat. And first of all, and it's been mentioned here before, but really quick, what is the Monroe Institute, and how did you get involved with those guys?
Yeah, so it's an institute of exploration of consciousness in Virginia.
Hmm.
And that's really what they do. So they have one-day programs, weekend programs, week-long programs, online, residential. There's big variety. I really, really do recommend the residential. Go there for a week. Your life will not be the same. And it just like it sounds, it's exploration of consciousness. So they use sound technology. Some people are familiar with hemisync
Hmm.
or binaural beats. They also use sound modulation, where the sound is coming from. So they use different type of sound technology to induce those deeper states of consciousness.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, it really, really works. That actually
Yeah.
what helped me to start meditating 11 years ago.
Yep.
So I wanted to start meditating daily, but I would fall in and out of the practice and I couldn't focus well enough for my standards. And listening to one of their recording, I just picked one that I really, really liked, and it was an hour long, and I did it every day for a year. So I would
Mhm.
meditate for a full hour every day for a year. Um,
What was
it,
which
it
one was
really,
that? Because there's so
That
many
was Between Worlds, and
between
it has
worlds.
all
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
shamanic sounds.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I
since
remember
then,
that
I
one.
have other ones that I can recommend that I love. Pieces of Heaven is just gorgeous, and it's
Oh, okay.
actually based on a near-death experience.
Oh, wow. Pieces of
So
Heaven. I don't
definitely
think
recommended
I haven't done that
Pieces of
one.
Heaven. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's great. It's great. And I have at least one I can share for free. I
Oh,
think it's no longer offered, and it is a beautiful one. So
okay.
I can
And
share that.
was Tom Campbell there when you were
No, he
um
wasn't there.
yeah, okay. Because I got turned on to his work early on in my journey. And I just was like finding all the synchronicities and like, oh my God, this guy's a science guy and he's talking like a UFO guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you were guided to that. What how did you find out
So
about it? Yeah.
yeah, so okay, so yeah, so I watched this show Unexplained on the Biology Channel, and they had a
Oh yeah.
whole thing about the Monroe Institute and the Gateline program, which is the first program. That's why it's called Gateway.
Hmm.
Gateway. That's what I
Yeah.
meant to say.
Gateway Hemisphere. Yeah.
And I just they actually showed a different program which does soul retrievals. That's
Okay.
different. It's called Lifeline. I've done
Okay.
that as well. I've done many, many, many programs. I've done 8 or 9 programs with the Monroe Institute.
Wow.
So, um, so I saw that on TV, and again, my mind was blown. Like, there is a place in the United States that does that. They're talking about soul retrievals and verifying the souls. I mean, it was just crazy, crazy in the best possible way. So
Right,
I
right.
wrote to them and I asked to do my internship with them, and they wrote back that they do not have internships. but
Okay.
they, they helped me, gave me a scholarship to go and attend the Gateway program. So I
Wow. They gave you a
did.
scholarship. Wow.
Yeah. So because I was studying for my doctorate in psychology,
Right,
so I
right, right.
think they saw potential there, and they were right because since that one program, I'm a total convert. I go there as often as I can. I love going there. I've opened after my first program there, so it's been, as I said, 10, 11 years. I opened a local chapter, which is now known as a Monroe Community Group. So I have
Oh,
monthly meetings
oh, cool.
now at my house, actually, and we meditate and we discuss different things.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's my involvement with the Monroe Institute. And I've done many programs with them. There are different programs with different themes and different goals. So the last one I've done is Starlines. I finally, it's one of the more advanced ones, which means there are a lot of prerequisites. And I was
Hmm.
maybe even a little afraid of it, like maybe afraid that I won't get anything. Yeah, okay. So I should mention that generally speaking, I'm pretty fearless person. So things that normal people would be afraid of,
Like
especially when you
pets.
talk about ET or spiritual explorations, kind of doesn't exist with me. I'm like, my curiosity is so much stronger than
Hmm.
any fear I would have, and that's always been like that since I was little.
Yeah.
But so when I mentioned that I was afraid, I don't mean afraid of what I would get, but afraid what I wouldn't get. So we're talking like inner insecurities about it's too concrete because you meet your group and you do things together in the astral plane. And I guess there was a side of me that didn't know if I could do it, didn't know if I would get results. So I avoided that program. Remember we talked about what's wild? It sounded too wild for me.
Well, okay.
And that changed in the last 2 years. There are few things that I'm interested more than ETs and EDs and all that stuff. So I finally went and done the Starlines program, and it was amazing and it's fascinating. And we explored the cosmos, both on the physical and astral level. They don't call it astral. They have different focus level. They have all system going. But
Okay.
it was fascinating. We explored the galactic core and black holes and all kind of interesting things. I
And
discovered I had an aspect of myself that is a fairy named Viola.
cool. So
I had a
if
visitation from my mom. Okay, now I'll stop. Go ahead.
no, no. So it's almost like a self-induced hypnotic session, right?
It is, but it's
Mhm.
not one session. So you basically
Yeah.
have meditation exercises morning till night. You're
Hmm.
doing several of those a day with breaks in between.
Mm.
Um, so you know, meditation and hypnosis are very
Mhm.
similar. It's just that
Yeah.
with hypnosis, somebody guides you so you can go deeper and just let go. And with the Monroe, yes, it's meditation, but it's all guided. You're in your booth, you're closed off with those
Mhm.
really high quality headphones. So it is exactly like hypnosis. And I've
Mhm.
had much better luck with that than when I went to hypnosis sessions to other hypnotherapists, because I also
Right.
conduct hypnosis. But
Well, you know, Rob Gothier, who channels Treb and Ardif, he got his start also with the Hemi Sync. He went through, what did he say? He went through like the whole program or something, you know, like 12 months
mhm.
of programs in like 6 weeks. He blasted through it all and said he highly recommends nobody do that. But he that was sort of his catalyst for
Mm.
discovering Treb and ending up astrally on his world and
I
having
see.
those
That makes
communications.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
has that been your catalyst for channeling, or just
Well,
a
it's
part of
really
it?
hard to say. It's really hard to answer that because it has been one of the many steps for my connection. You see, the channeling, I don't really separate the channeling from the psychic stuff. So I
Mhm.
see it all as intuitive connection, psychic connection, however you want to call it. So I
Yeah.
was already doing readings before. So I would say that was probably the catalyst. That was the opening.
Okay.
Um,
Doing readings for other people.
with cards. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Just
okay.
would call them psychic readings, and I have my
Okay.
cards that I use, but I don't do like typical spreads. I just connect to people energy and information start. I still do it, and information starts coming, and then I have these beautiful cards with beautiful art, and it helps me hone in on certain details. Um, so doing that really
Mhm.
opened the gate because channeling is similar to reading, but you skip the bridge. So with reading, I'm still me. I'm with my eyes open. I get information. I interpret it as I'm talking, and I'm talking to you. With the channeling, I make that process more direct. So instead
Mhm.
of saying what I'm getting, it's allowing it to come directly. So it takes a lot of trust and practice,
Right.
but it's similar process. You're just cutting the bridge of you in between, and you're still in between, but inside and to a lesser extent.
I see. I see. I see. And was there a aha moment for when the channeling sort of popped in 100% and you made that transition, or it was just
No, no,
no?
it was always there. It was always there. So the first time I channeled with Lisa was similar to the times I channeled before that when I decided I wasn't that much into it. And it's similar to what I'm now. I am more confident about it now. I'm more okay with it now. But I feel like it was always there for me.
Okay.
It, yeah, I guess it's just one of my callings.
Yeah. And were the Hathors the first to really come through the strongest, or were there others
The
that came
first, I think,
first?
was Jesus.
Jesus. Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I love it when people with different religious backgrounds sort of make these
Yes, yes.
overlapping
It was
things.
so
So
strange. The first time I didn't know it was Jesus because
mhm.
Lisa actually picked the first energy that wanted to communicate through me, and she
Okay.
gave me Jesus' ascended name, which is
Sananda.
Sananda. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I had no idea what Sananda was. My group mates didn't know either, so I didn't know what I was channeling. I was trusting Lisa, obviously. You know, if she's saying that energy wants to work with me, I'm in. But I had no idea who or what I was channeling.
Mm.
And then at the end of that lesson, maybe the following day, because I was practicing all the time, I told my husband, pick a card, don't tell me what the card is, and I'm going to channel that energy. And sure enough, he picks Jesus. And
Mm.
again, I didn't know what I was channeling, and I was channeling Jesus. And I thought I was channeling my spirit guide or my higher self because it was, you know, stuff like, yes, I've always been with you, I'm always here for you and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I just assumed it was a spirit guide. I was shocked when he told me later it was Jesus. So Jesus was the first one that came
Wow.
through. And no matter who picked the card, it came through again and again and again. And second was Hathor. So Jesus
Okay.
and Hathor were my first two connections, and they were loud and clear from the beginning. Although I would say Hathor was intentionally, or maybe not intentionally, intentionally vague about our connection.
Hathor was?
Yes, I think it's a gentle introduction to
I
that
see.
world and to that energy and to my involvement. Because as I told you, until 2 years ago, when I started doing this, I would say full time, this was a little too wild for me. Not completely. I still followed Seth, which I think is actually the only channel material that I'm really familiar with. Now a little more, but back then only.
Well, Lisa, how did you find out about Lisa?
Around the same time, so 2.5 years ago, there were all these weird synchronicities in my life, and her name kept on popping up. So I kept on making notes. I have her name because I took a course with Daniel Pinchbeck and Sean, some long European last name that I will never remember. And Sean mentioned, yes, Lisa Royal Holt. I am 100% sure that she's channeling. From all the channelers, I believe in her. So I'm like, oh, okay, let me write it down. And then
Daniel Pinchbeck, he does talks on psychedelics and emerging technologies. What was
that was it.
Oh, that was the course. Okay. Yeah, I've met him a couple of times.
It was kind of free form and with a lot of discussions. It was very, very interesting, very elevated discussions. And Sean brought the softer, more spiritual side, which was very, very needed with Pinchback.
Yeah, totally.
So that was how her name first came up. But then I had a client of mine that all of a sudden became obsessed with channeling and introduced me to your Gaia show. And there was Lisa. And actually, before your Gaia show, I already wrote Lisa because somebody else mentioned her. And I somehow got into her class. It was already full. She told me, I'm sorry, there's no room for new people. And somehow I got in. And then this client who was obsessed with channeling introduced me to the Gaia show, your Gaia show, which I think, honestly, Reuben, changed so many people's lives. I think interviews with Ed just change the public awareness and discussion around channeling.
Right.
And it's just invaluable. You know, we're all in gratitude to you.
Oh, go great. I'm just following my passion. I'm just doing my thing. So I appreciate all you guys.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So Lisa, and you took Lisa's channeling class as well then? Okay.
Yes, it was several months. It was long form with a lot of breath work and meditation.
Right?
It
online?
was post-COVID, so it was all online. It was the first course that you did online, I think.
Cool. And right quick, going back to the Jesus thing, was there something specific, some good nuggets that you remember from those channelings when Jesus came through?
Yeah. He has, you know, we're saying he, but it's not really he, but he has such a powerfully loving presence and energy. It's very different than Hathor to me. It's very hard to describe, but just all heart. It's all love and light, and in a very powerful way. And that's what the message were about. There was a participant that was gay, that was asking about the feelings of shame and the relationship with the church. And I remember Jesus, as an answer, led the group through this little meditation of embracing yourself and holding yourself in this light and seeing yourself as this child. I don't even remember the details. You know, as I'm describing it, verbally, it actually sounds very similar to a lot of things that Hathor and other masters channeled through, but it felt different. It just felt different.
Yeah, that's what fascinates me with channelers who are able to identify those feelings, the feeling of the energy. And I'm just in the beginning, like, oh yeah, I kind of feel a little something with this energy, that energy, not quite like you guys that are able to just like, this is this is that. So, but fascinating how all that, how the, and the information can be very similar, but yes, the feeling is just,
it feels different. Sometimes the words are a little different. Not by much. Remember that it's an overlap of the energies, and I'm still here, so it's still my vocabulary, but not 100%. Occasionally, different entities will pick a word that I don't really use. I mean, it's obviously in my memory bank, but I don't really use it, and it would be very strange to hear myself saying a word that I don't say, or that I'm not even sure what it means. That happened once.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And did you have to look it up later and find out?
Yes.
Okay.
I asked my husband. My husband is a writer and an editor. I'm like, does that make sense? He's like, oh, yes.
Well, has your husband been dealing with the journey, I should say? Has he embraced it? And
he is such a trooper. He is 100% supportive at this point, completely embracing it. At this point, would look back for the unicorn with me, which is so funny because when we first met, he was the biggest skeptic. He was one of those people that was proud to call themselves atheist and was carrying that word with a badge of honor, refusing to let go. And I would say maybe even that of it still stayed a little bit. But his mind is so open and he's 100% supportive of me. He's my best assistant in expos and stuff because we are so on the same wavelength. We're kind of a little bit same person, very different personalities, but successful union.
Oh, very good, very good. And I mean, all of this for you happened quite recently in relative compared to some of the other channelers who've been doing this, for a decade or plus. So what is that like going from skeptic to channeling to now, I think you mentioned, can I say it? You're going to be at the next Conscious Life Expo speaking publicly, right? Channeling publicly.
Yes.
So very quickly moving up in the ranks from through that process. I just was wondering how does that feel, and again, your husband and other people around you, how are they sort of supporting and experiencing, what's their experience? I guess to talk to him would be that best, but what are you seeing?
In one way, it's been very fast. Like you're saying, it's all just happening, and it's dizzying and exciting and surreal. But on the other hand, Reuben, when I started channeling full time, I was there. I felt the connection. It's not that I haven't developed since. We never stopped developing. Sure. But channeling wise, I felt like I was there, and me and my group members would ask them, there's like no exposure. Nobody's finding me. What is going on? And they're like, just play with it for 2 years. Everything's going to happen in 2 years. And they said it 2 years ago. Exactly.
Oh, the guides did.
So I've been waiting for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Now, knowing it and like hearing it at the time, like, oh, cool, 2 years, and actually living these 2 years, channeling several times a week and dedicating myself to it for 2 years with very little movement happening with it on the outside, did not feel like fast. It felt like forever. Those 2 years felt like 20 years. So in one way, it's fast, and in other ways, it's not. It's been, like I said, I feel like everything that I've experienced in my life led me to this point. So it's fast, but it's also 41 years in the making.
Okay. Well, going back to the Hathors, and when they started coming in, did you have any reference for who they were, or no? Okay. So walk us through that journey and how you got to.
So again, I got the name Hathor from Lisa. So I previous that did not hear of the name Hathor, had no familiarity. It sounded like a male warrior to me, which I mentioned to you. It sounds like Hathor, like it. So I did not expect anything soft and flowy to come. And even later, when I heard that other people knew of the name Hathor, they told me, yeah, there's this man, this channeler, Tom Canyon, that channels Hathor and the Hathors. So I actually only had a very masculine perspective, and I had no idea who that energy or what that energy was.
I see. Yeah, Tom Kenyon sort
And
of put the Hathors on the map in the channeling world, I think.
yeah, and I still don't know his stuff, by the way. But what's interesting that we're probably channeling very similar energies because every time I focus on a specific area, so one of my other really strong connection is the earth. So I channel different earth energies and elements. And I know in one of my groups, somebody said, "Oh yeah, Tom Kenyon wrote a book about that." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Oh,
So there's
they're
definitely
overlapping.
overlap, but I don't know his work at all, at all, at all. I have not
Hmm.
intentionally have not watched any of his channeling. I do have one vocal recording from him that somebody gave to me a long time ago, so I have
Hmm.
heard him once.
He's got a
Um,
great voice.
yeah, I don't even know. I don't. Yeah, I don't know him. I'm sure one day we'll connect. So that's
Yeah,
how I
yeah.
was introduced to Hathor, and I had
Okay.
no idea who or what it was. But to my surprise, when I channeled Hathor, it was this really nice and flowy energy, and I'm like, oh, I love it. I want
Mm.
to do that more. And of course, that card came up more and more and more by other people, just
Mm.
like Jesus did, but even more so.
Okay.
And I remember one of the sitters asked, "What's your connection to Hathor? Why are you coming through Yafi?" And while I was channeling, and they said, "Yeah, because of the familiarity. It's an easy connection." And that did not raise any questions in me. I'm like, "Oh, familiar. I was probably in ancient Egypt. They were probably in ancient Egypt." Like, I don't know why. I think they put sometimes certain blocks on us, or maybe it's
Yeah.
just our lack of open-mindedness as it keeps on unraveling and we keep on opening. But back then, I didn't think that the connection was more than that. I just
Mm.
thought, I'm a compatible vehicle. Sure, they'll channel through me. Why not?
Right.
But as the years now gone, I realize there's a much deeper connection there.
Yeah, what is that? Can you share what some of the details of those connections
It's
that you've
kind
uncovered?
of difficult because I don't really know what it all means yet. There are a lot of questions, but I seem to be a part of that collective. So
Okay.
there's a whole collective. So it's not just one being Hathor. Maybe
Hmm.
that's why Tom Kenyon refers to them as the Hathors. I'm not sure, but it's
Right.
not just one being, it's a collective.
Hmm.
And many beings that we know throughout history are a part of that collective, whether it's from ancient Egypt, like Isis and other beings that were there, and from
Hmm.
other times. So Venus, Aphrodite, Guan Yin, they're all a part of that collective. It's all that essence, that energy. And
Hmm.
I seem to be, or a part of me seem to be a part of that collective.
Okay. And the Kuan Yin and the Venus and that those nuggets came through the channelings later.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Guan Yin, no, that I had the realization. But Venus and Aphrodite and
Aphrodite. Okay.
many other names, they're saying that this is a specific essence of the divine feminine.
Okay. Yeah.
And civilizations interpreted it differently and gave it different names. But there are a lot of similarities. And even when you go and read about those gods and goddesses, it's very interesting. So they're usually the goddesses of love, but they
Hmm.
also usher people in the afterlife, and they're also related to death and spirit. Why? I mean, you wouldn't think that love and death necessarily be related, but in those different cultures, those goddesses were often associated with these two things.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's interesting how there are similarities, though I'm probably not the right person to really ask too many questions about that because I don't really know much about history, about mythology. It's definitely not my strength.
Well, would it be all right to ask the Hathors later a little bit about that
Of
stuff?
course.
Okay, sweet, sweet. Well, looking at the time, we're flying through here. Maybe would it be okay to go into channeling and then afterwards we'll do Yafi questions with you personally, unless anybody wants to go, have something that they want to pop in right quick before we go into the channeling. But were you raising your hand, Donna? I wasn't, or Lisa. Okay, Lisa just has her hand. Go ahead, Lisa.
Um, okay, yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Monroe Institute because it's something that I've actually been really interested in for a few years. Um, and I live on Vancouver Island, and there's a location here on the island. Um,
Yeah, I know the person who runs it.
yeah,
Hmm.
cool. So I don't know. I guess I'm wondering, I can't afford to do anything big right now, like a retreat, which I mean, I'm sure it would be amazing. But is it still, I'm guessing I know the answer, but is it still worth it to do like meditations here and there from them until I can go to a retreat?
I would personally, and they would kill me for saying that, I would personally recommend you doing individual meditations, just like you mentioned, then doing the online workshops. They have online workshops, they're a little more affordable, and people have been very happy with them. But as a person who have gone there in person, I recommend either doing things on your own, and then when you can afford it, go in there in person, or at least do the online live workshop where you're speaking to live leaders, group leaders, and interacting. But being there in person is the best. And doing your own stuff. That's what I did for a year every day before I even considered going there. In terms of spiritual practice or spiritual connection, meditating every day or near daily is really the number one. We can talk about it for hours, and we can talk about different ideas and different religious ideas, but really daily meditation is the number one tool. And I find I prefer free flow rather than guided meditations, but they have a lot of both. And I find their meditations wonderful. They also have an app now. It's called Expand. And you have some free stuff there, but you can also purchase it. It's not very expensive. And there are some amazing features there, including timed free flow meditations in different focus levels or with different goals. So it's really, really nice. And they have a lot of guided meditations there too. So I definitely recommend that. That's probably one of the best tools you can have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I hear you. Like, I have a really hard time with meditation, like just sitting down and meditating. And I've been wanting to develop a practice for years, and I just really struggle with it. So, yeah, I feel like the Monroe Institute meditations would really be helpful with that.
Absolutely. And like I said, on the app, you have a lot of shorter guided meditation, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And with their sound technology, it's not just guided. So you also have that supporting sound technology that helps take you there. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and it helps you get into that really deep state. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Lisa. Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a very quick question. It's very relevant for the start for the channeling, maybe. Yafi, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Although we will see this right now, how you start your channeling, and I'm sure that as we meditate and we practice and we get into it, everyone develops their own ritual to put their minds or to get into right frequency, I would say, to get the connection for the channeling. Can you share your experience, what you do mentally to tune yourself to get into the channeling?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. So it is different for every person and for every channeler. And I think one of the things that helped me, that I have been meditating for so long, so regularly, that it is relatively easy for me to get into the zone. But I do have an invocation that is important. So you want to have some kind of invitation, and a lot of people like to have some kind of a protection. I have a little bit of a different view of angle of protection. So my invocation is, I play in love and light. I open to Hathor, source, whatever, now. So I play in love and light. I put myself in that notion that we're playing, we're just having fun together, keeping it light and keeping it playful. Make sure that you are in a higher frequency of operation. So it makes it much easier for me to connect. And also making it much easier for me to be open and for them to come through. So I play in love and light because I'm only interested in exploring realms of love and light. And then I open now. And that's really my ritual. So I say that. I used to say that out loud. Now I say that inside. And I just I just go inward. I just focus my gaze inward. And that's all I do. And I take a deep breath, and then I just jump on the flow. And, you know, the flow of energy, I'm sure it feels different to different channelers, but for me, it's pretty subtle. So when I first started, I would have the inclination to say hello or greeting or something, to start talking. And it would just be that inclination to start talking. And I would just have to trust it and say it, even though I didn't know what I was going to say next. So a lot of it is just trusting that subtle flow, even if it's really subtle, and knowing that it's there and to just jump and go for it. And that's why you really need a safe and playful space to explore, to practice, to see what it feels like. What does it feel like when you're just making it up? What does it feel like when there's more coming through? Can you even tell the difference? Can you tell the difference from different energies? It's all about playing around and practicing in a safe and positive space.
Let's see, Stephen, go ahead.
Hey, hopefully this is just a super brief question. Yafi, cool. I really enjoy your energy and your approach. And so I'm completely new to your channel. Like, I don't know what the energy is about. What are some veins of thought that you've gotten a lot from this channel? Like, how should we kind of think to propose our questions, or what should we be thinking about that we might get the most out of this questioning?
Okay. So it really depends, because you can ask personal questions, you can ask global questions. It depends on your level of interest. Generally speaking, and I don't think it will really be a problem here, but it happens sometimes in groups when people ask very personal questions, or they ask, what should I do? Or, you know, the guides are not going to make decisions for you. They're not going to tell you where to move. There was one woman that wanted the guides to tell her whether she should leave her husband or not. They're not going to tell you. So they obviously had a much better answer than my
What are
version.
winning tickets to the lottery?
Exactly.
Winning numbers.
So there are lesser questions, but generally speaking, it's whatever interests you, and it can be personal as long as you're not asking them what to do. They're never going to tell you what to do. There are exceptions. Never say never. But generally speaking, any questions regarding insight or guidance, if it's personal, it's good, or any general question. So any question that you have interest in. Now, remember that my knowledge and my vocabulary is limited to what I know, but their awareness is much more expanded than that, and they'll do whatever they can to use my abilities and capabilities to express what they want. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, and it is. And so I guess I would phrase it like, what I'm getting from you is like almost like I'm asking you, and the energy you put forth a question, how I would talk to you, and I might get the most out of my questions. Like, because sorry, I'm not phrasing this the best, but because for me it helps to know like what kind of energy, like what kind of questions I would be asking would be tailored via how I feel in a specific energy or something. And so I guess my main question too is like what veins of thought you have gotten the most from, which I guess is just like your general guidance as a whole is what you're saying. So it does help, actually. I get a lot from that, and I'm being all wordy. So
yeah, so the energy that I'm going to channel is, we call her Hathor, but it's really a divine feminine. And they refer to themselves as they. I say she because it feels so feminine and so soft, but it's really more than one being, though they can individuate and come forth as one person speaking. So the divine feminine, it's all about flow. I can mention several main points. So they usually come into contact with humanity in big times of change and transformation. And they say time of really exciting changes, and that is why they are back, and that's why they're here communicating and giving messages. So that's one message about these exciting times that we're in. Exciting, and many people have other words to describe it, but exciting. And the importance of the feminine and feminine energy coming into our world right now for further balance. is also one topic, and everything that feminine means, because it doesn't really just mean a woman. So I've learned, for example, that water is a feminine element. The voice is feminine. So they're all kind of different things. But it's really, you know, we're mentioning different things, but it's really about your way of being as a whole and finding greater balance and integration. And for that to happen, because our society has been so focused through the male gaze, the insertion of this energy, the divine feminine, into our society has been important and been touched on by them. Does that help?
That's super helpful, and I'm really excited.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Cool. Well, with that said, shall we move into some channeling, and then we can do some more, you know, at the final, we'll get some final updates from you, Yafi, on your journey and where people can find you and all that stuff. But for now, take us through your process of channeling.
Okay. So like I said, it's relatively quick. I will just close my eyes, and within a few seconds, I'll start. We did not touch at all about field tuning. I don't know if
field
you
tuning.
want
Yeah,
to.
yeah. Let's go. Let's do that.
So we did mention that one of the feminine aspects is the voice. And the Hathors are known for using their voice for field tuning. So what they do is they produce sounds, produce waves that activate within each one of us to increase our own field of energy, to also include all of us as a group into that field, and then resonate in coherence, which then amplifies our group energy and allows better connection. And people that are sensitive can really, really feel the energy and feel the field. And people that are less sensitive often can feel the field tuning, even though they cannot feel it during the channeling.
Okay. And so this is something we collectively can do with you?
Usually, yes. Usually for the field tuning, they recommend for you to close your eyes and kind of settle in so you can feel it and kind of allow the energy to flow smoothly.
Okay. Is this something audibly that we're going to do ourselves, or just experience it, just feel it?
Usually just experience. I
Okay.
will say, if you're muted and you feel the calling to make sounds, go ahead. Don't stop yourself.
Okay.
But usually it's something that people observe and absorb.
Absorb. Okay. We will be ready to resorb. Bring it,
Okay.
Alana says.
All right. So I'm going to go in and start. So we'll start. Do you want to start with some field tuning and then we'll go to the verbal?
Sure.
Or do you want the field tuning later on? Whatever you want.
Is everybody ready for field tuning now? Are we good? Yes, we're thumbs up for field tuning right now.
All right. All right, let's do that. All right. Blessings to you all. We know the energy is still running through you. It is quite all right. You may feel it in different parts in your body or in your mind, and that is also all right. We are excited to be here, sharing this space and this field with you, sharing our energy and consciousness with you. It is a blessed, blessed opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and for us too. I was feeling a sense of contraction and expansion during the field tuning, and I'm just wondering what's going on there.
Yes. So because we're working with such a diverse group of individuals, we kept the tuning for specific actions, you would say. So one of the things that we did is that we opened a vessel and ran the energy through the vessel. So generally speaking, each participant has a clearer vessel to experience and hold the energy. Another thing that we did was heart opening, which you may have experienced. So we specifically focused on the heart for opening. You may have experienced that as contraction, grounded it to the lower energy centers, and then expanded once again to the whole. So this was the process we completed, and you indeed were sensitive enough to feel certain parts of it.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome. It's awesome to be able to feel it, just not in the words, but also just really in the body. So is it okay to jump into some questions? I have tons of questions for you guys.
Absolutely. This is why we're here.
Awesome. And I know our audience has as well. So I'll kind of do a little warm up here. And I may have asked this in the previous session we did, but just to get a little more familiar with the Hathor energy, we're familiar with the Egyptian representation with the webbed ears. And I think you said last time that this was an actual physical manifestation that came down on Earth during these times. I'm just wanting to go a little bit further with the roots of this energy, and Yafi was saying earlier that it's very connected to the Venusian energy, feminine energy. So how does this relate to that, and also the other energies that we are familiar with from that time, like the Ra and Thoth energy? You're going to.
So our energy has many threads, and well, you mentioned some threads that are connected to ours but are not within our collective. So we'll try to separate everything. So first of all, our collective, you may say, originated in the Sirius star system.
Oh, okay.
We originate, like everyone, from source and from the one. However, we came together and began working together as a group during our Syrian time, you may say that. So our origin is Sirius in nature, and we have been working together for very, 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 very long in human time understanding. And because of that, we often refer to ourselves as we. We have been working together towards shared goals for so many eons that we can easily function together as one in our amplified state. However, I can also individuate myself and speak to you as the individual, which you may or may not call Hathor. Now, as you mentioned in the previous conversation and briefly now again, indeed, we are connected to many entities that have been identified over the centuries or the millennia by different civilizations. So the Venusian energy that you mentioned, which is related to the planet Venus, is actually related to a Pleiadian thread that we are in close contact with, as we have many shared goals. However, it is not our specific collective. The goddess Venus, however, who was known as the goddess of love, was indeed me. However, back then, well, me not in physical. So people back then were familiar with my energy, not through a physical manifestation, but through spiritual familiarity of the energy, and they named me Venus.
Okay, awesome. And just to go into that Sirius thread line a little more, there's Sirius is, from my understanding, Sirius is sort of a mixed bag of energies that came into Earth, and we had a lot of light, but there was also some darker energies that came through as well. How does the Hathor energy interact with some of those other Sirian light dark energies?
Yes, we would say that our involvement is within a specific sphere. You may call it a specific realm or specific density, and therefore we do not have interactions currently with what you would consider lower vibrational entities. Not to say that we never have, as we all come from the same source. And indeed, when the life of the civilizations we're talking about walked in physical manner in the Sirius system, there was a mixed bag. There was a lot of everything. In many ways, the same for humans today. Of course, different because different civilizations, but many similarities. However, our interaction with humanity and with others, this is not our only activity, is only through realms of, you would say, light.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we do not have interactions with lower vibrational entities or groups.
Well, during the Egyptian period, there was also a mixed bag of energies, from it seems from many different places sort of converged there at that time.
Exactly.
And we had a lot of positive, you guys, I mentioned the Ra and the Thoth energy also was very prominent at that time, but then a lot of Orion energy, perhaps some darker Syrian energy ended up coming in. And can you give a little more clarity on what happened there during that time?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
It was a time of awakening of knowledge, and some of the knowledge was kept secret for protection, and other parts of it were brought to the surface. So it can be used by the people and can be shared with those who are appropriate. However, when you bring something to the surface and you bring awareness to it, all kind of fractions become aware of it. And as a result, there was a convergence of many civilizations, Earth-based, space-based, and many in between. And indeed, then you had a mixed bag of humans and non-humans. They were all coming for the awakening, for the knowledge, for the power. And the ones that are lower vibration do seek power. The ones that are higher vibration seek knowledge and expansion. So expansion through consciousness, not through power. So there is a difference, but indeed it attracted many groups at that time. And there was some weeding out done to try to ensure that the energy was only used for good. However, you cannot protect and segregate the energy forever. Once you bring something to the surface, it is understood that some may try to use it in a harmful way. However, the hope and the attempt is that the positive, the benefit would be so much more so that the impact would be overwhelmingly positive.
I see. In during the development of some of those technologies, did the Hathors have a say or a hand in perhaps some of the physical structures like the pyramids and these types of things?
Yes, we had a very active role in the planning and construction of those structures you call pyramids. We were not the only ones. There were several groups that were involved and came together. There were the Pleiadian strand that I mentioned before was indeed present back then. We worked together very, very closely. And not only us, there were other groups as well. And yes, we helped, you would say, putting the pyramids together.
Okay. Did you help in bringing technology through, or energy, or what was there something specific in a direction that you had
There
involved?
was technology, however, most of it is what you would refer to as spiritual technology. So technology of learning to work with the energy of the earth, learning to produce sounds, learning to focus your minds in a certain way, and learning to manipulate matter through intention. So a lot of that technology was brought in. This helped literally mold the stones of the pyramids, but also for healing and for transportation. So there were many, many uses for this technology. And indeed, we brought it somewhat to the people, but really to help achieve what needed to be achieved. It was just like today was a time of big transformation, and we had work to do. We built the pyramids to anchor that energy, to utilize the energy from the earth, to hold a certain field, to help the coming and going of different groups that were needed at this time. And also as a place of teaching and storage of knowledge.
And what ultimately happened there? It seems, at least in our current timeline, the Egyptian civilization sort of turned a darker path, and things kind of fell apart. Was there a specific catalyst for that, or yeah, why are we not flying around and levitating structures and flying around in these awesome technologies that existed back then?
Well, we will say that the time back then, you would say, was a step towards where we are today. Mm-hmm. So you could see it as a failure, or you could see it as a step moving us closer to where we are today. As if it didn't happen 12,000 years ago, you would not be where you stand today. So we do not see it as a failure. We see it as information was brought to the surface, to the people. Some was utilized, some was abused, and some was buried. And it is relevant today in your awakening as a society, as humankind today. So it was not in vain. It was just one step to move you closer. The vehicle is thinking of an analogy that we find silly, but we will express it anyway. It's like when a person is trying to quit smoking, and they try and they quit for a little bit, and then they go back again, and then they try, and eventually they try and they quit permanently. Those previous times when they tried and failed are not really failure, but rather steps that got them closer to the ability to quit completely. We hope this example makes sense.
Yeah. So instead of 6 packs a day, we're only doing 2 now, and maybe we'll get to the 1, and then eventually we'll weed totally off, and we'll be flying around in machines again.
Yes, you will.
Sweet. So, there's a lot of talk of mystery schools, especially coming out of Egypt, both of dark and light. And I'm assuming much of this forgotten technology had been sort of, or is still being kept within some of these secret mystery schools.
Well, the secret mystery schools that we had back then are, you could say, in hibernation today, or they took a different form. Those
Okay.
in the same form barely exist today. There are small fractions that maintain that knowledge and continue that teaching, but it's very, very, very small. On the other hand, what you have is awakening of information in ways that weren't available before. Even when you talk about the internet, right, and exposure and what you can expose yourself to. So today, the mystery schools are not so mysterious and not so secret.
Right.
The veil is the veil of, we will say, so it is mystery, the veil of mystery. So just like you were talking before about a matter of belief, if you don't believe, you don't see. This is similar principle. It has a similar principle here.
I see. And going back to the mention of things being buried around that area, I keep hearing a lot of chatter and talk about some type of time capsule-like structure or technology below the left paw of the Sphinx. Some people may say the right paw, but is there a time capsule of sorts, maybe a technology that we could uncover in the future that could help us understand this?
There is a hidden bank of knowledge hidden under the Sphinx. However, we are not aware of any time capsule, but there is a record.
Records. Sorry, Hall of Records.
That can and will be found. If we're getting mixed information about it, as we think it has been found by certain people and kept secret. So it has been found, but not by everyone. Not everybody knows it.
Is it a portal of sorts, or is it an actual physical technology?
Physical.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It is physical in the same way that your beloved skull is physical.
That was my next question. Is it an actual skull?
It is not.
Okay. All right. Very good. Are there skulls in that area that serve a similar purpose?
The skulls in Egypt are not in that area, actually, of the pyramids. So we are, as you asked that, this question has not been asked of us. We're able to locate certain skulls, but they are not around the pyramids.
Okay. In someone's house, perhaps? In the Egyptian area?
It looks more like caves to us.
Okay. All right. Fascinating. Well, I don't want to hog up all the questions. So guys, raise your hand if you have questions, and maybe I'll sneak one more in here before someone gets in. But okay. Well, I'll save it. Will's got his hand up. Go ahead, Will.
Cool. Just to say thank you so much for this, having a great time. I wanted to ask you a question that we've asked here before, but not to you. The question is, what excites you most about humanity right now?
Yes. What excites us most about humanity right now is the widespread openness that is happening. A larger percentage than ever of your population is opening in their minds and in their awareness to matters that were taboo and hidden until relatively recently. And this is very, very exciting to us. It is exciting to us that we can come and express these ideas openly with, we would say, very, very little screens in place, and have you, so many of you, accept those ideas and be open to listen and ask questions. This is extremely exciting for us. As we mentioned, these schools are no longer secret.
Awesome. Will, anything else? You good?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Stephen, go ahead.
Hello there. It's an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
And my question is from the tuning at the beginning to what I gather is y'all very much understand tunings. And my question is in regards, or more a statement question of tuning up with the universe and ideas that can help us, or directions we can use to tune up with the earth, the universe, the people around us, opening our hearts.
Yes, absolutely. So we will say that tuning into your core self, your higher self, will include tuning into your earth, into your universe, and all aspects of attunement you're looking for. As the deeper you look within yourself, there is only one to attune with. So our suggestion here is to learn to attune within yourself, know your mind, know your spirit, know your heart. And know, we don't only refer to intellectual knowing, although it is a part of it. We are talking about experiential knowing, a form of being. So, should you practice being in that state of alignment, of beingness, of oneness, you are indeed teaching yourself to attune with your own heart, with your higher self, with the universe, with your own earth, and even with other entities that you will then be more open to communicate with.
Thank you.
Donna, go ahead.
You talked about lots of knowledge coming up in the Egyptian times, and that the pyramids were used for storage of the knowledge. Was it physical? Was it stored in a physical form? And where is it now? The secret knowledge, where is it?
Yes, indeed, it was stored in physical form, and there are several locations. One of them, as we mentioned, is indeed underneath the Sphinx. There is another one embedded in the wall of the actual pyramid, and it is indeed physical. However, it is what you would consider mixed technology, both physical and consciousness based. So there is an actual physical, and we don't know if device is the right instrument. There is a physical instrument, one under the Sphinx and one embedded in the pyramid wall. So the physical instrument or device can actually be found. However, you will not be able, not everybody can use it or access the information and the knowledge stored within it. However, there are some individuals that do know how to use it and are not of pure intentions. So it is advantageous that it is still hidden. Was there another question there?
Yeah, I was wondering do you know anything about the Knights Templar, and if they found some of this knowledge, if that was their quest, if that was what they were looking for, and if they...
We will say that yes, they were looking for any knowledge of utilizing earth power together with consciousness and utilize it as technology. So they would not call it Hathor, for example, but what they were after is indeed one of the same knowledge, the same power.
So was it the ability to move between dimensions? What is the power?
The power includes many abilities. So, and as we mentioned, transportation, which you may also call teleportation, was one of them. But this was not the ultimate goal, as there are many, many uses to this technology and this knowledge. We are talking about knowledge that would allow you to live in a more connected way to your environment. Again, the earth produces energy, physical energy. You may use it as electricity, or you may use it as any form of energy. And the Egyptians knew about this. The Egyptians, we're talking about our groups and others, knew about this power manufactured by the earth. And one of our knowledge areas is knowing how to work, how to utilize this power in different ways.
And that was one of the functions of the pyramids, was it? To
Absolutely.
amplify that.
One of the main functions, that is the reason for the shape of the pyramid. It runs the energy of the earth in a very particular way.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Donna. Sophia, go ahead.
Hi, my questions follow on from Donna's quite nicely, actually. I was curious to know if there are certain sites, particularly Dendera and I suppose the Venus temples, etc., where your energy is more anchored on the earth or easier to access.
Yes, much of our energy is concentrated in Dendera. This is indeed a very good place to connect to us, we would say, in terms of physical places on Earth. However, we are, as you probably know, not tied to specific locations, as our navigation is done in the consciousness realms, not based on physical locations. However, because of our proximity and because of our involvement, there are certain areas in Egypt that have very high concentration of our energy. Dendera is, we would say, the main one in Egypt. Let us see if we can locate other areas. Abu Simbel is another place where our energy is concentrated, especially on the right area, which is the feminine portal. And there are other locations that we were in Egypt, including the pyramids, but we would say that these two locations are the main ones, in addition to the pyramids and the specific pathways of energies that are still running through. So when you think of the pyramids, you're thinking about the structure. When we're connecting to the energy flows, which include our essence of the pyramid, there are actually lines under the ground. The same way you have electric wires. So these are wires of energy that is running under the ground and into the pyramids, but it's mainly under the ground. And there too, our essence is focused.
And are there any particular locations that you would like our assistance with as physical beings to go and work on the energies with there?
You usually already are positioned where you should be, as many of you are not where you are by random chance. So you are indeed anchoring the energies in different areas, different ones of you. However, as we said, it's not only physical. So physicality does have a place, does have a part in it, but you are also, even you personally, right now, are helping in anchoring these energies in Egypt. You are one of those involved with that location on Earth. So even though you may not be there right now, your energy is still in operation there.
Thank you. And I have just one more quick question. The Kalu group that were assisting the Essenes or advising the Essene group 2,000 years ago in Israel and Egypt, who were they, and were you associated with them?
We are not familiar with this specific group, but we will tell you that the Essenes were heavily guided by Arcturian energy, as we would, if you choose to divide things by beings by galactic lineages, we would call Mary Magdalene and Jesus as also having Arcturian origins that were assisting and guiding the Essenes at that time. So the influence was mostly Arcturian and not our own. So our influence and involvement at that time was relatively minimal, as you were already in good hands.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sophia. All right, Sandra. You have another question. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask, how are the souls created by the source? And how are then in the end grouped to be assigned maybe to collectives, or how do they find their ways to be in a particular dimension more than in other dimensions? But more particularly, how are they being assigned to collectives? And here, just like as a practical example on myself, do I belong to a collective? Thank you.
So, yes, you asked many big questions here. We'll try to take them in order. You may have to bring them up one at a time. However, we'll start with, where do souls originate? And we will say some of the big questions are somewhat of a mystery, even to us and to all beings. So we have different level of awareness and exposure to knowledge than you or than anyone else, but it's not absolute, it's not complete. So from our perspective, souls originate from the one, the true and only one, by mere desire. It's very difficult to explain, but the same way a thought or an emotion in you exists just because it exists, just because you uttered it, the one source creates souls, as you call them, by the mere desire, intention to have those different sparks of experiences. This is the best we could do. Again, keeping in mind that here our perspective is also limited by our own awareness. Now, you also asked about how do collectives come together? And we will say, nobody is assigned to a collective. A collective comes together because they share a certain goal or interest, and they come together and they work together. And over time, the ones that have come toward a specific goal develop their own energy signature, and therefore, to your eyes, their own identity. And that is how a collective is formed. However, nobody assigns anybody to a collective. It is formed naturally, just like nobody assigned you to be in Reuben's portal. You chose to because you were interested to. So this is similar. Now, how do we know as a collective or as an individual when we are needed, when we are called on a mission? There is, you would say that it begins with our own interest and willingness to be of assistance, to be of involvement. And once our interest is open, is broadcasting in a way, the willingness. So when there is a need, the need is then broadcasted to us, and there is compatibility between what we're able to give and what is needed, then we step in. It happens very naturally and organically. It's a little difficult to explain things from your perspective. Once again, we could use a metaphor of if you pour water, the water will go different strands and will go a different way. The specific location and strands the water will go depends on the environment. And here it's a little lower, so it will stream this way. Here there's less resistance, so it will stream that way. Here the water is coming together in cohesion. It's the same way. It happens organically based on the need and based on the availability and the readiness.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Sandra. Is this Tony? Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Hathor. It's a pleasure and honor to be in your presence. What a great energy. I never think of about kids often, or questions about kids, but what just came to mind is, like, what advice would you have for like the young souls that are entering, our world, and in a sense going through this limited like world of like limitations? Like, what advice do you have for them if they are remembering who they are and they've gone through the October system and they have that remembrance without feeling isolated or like managing the flow of they know who they are, but yet they have to hide perhaps? Or do you have any advice for young kids as they're...
The kids that are born into your world today are born into a completely different world that you used to know. The world that you are discovering now, just discovering, not even fully known yet, is the world that they are already being born into. So in some way, they are living in the future. Now, this has many implications. One is that many of them are more sensitive and aware, whether to social needs or environmental needs, right? And on the other hand, many of them may have emotional difficulties because the world does not resonate yet in the same frequency they do. So in a way, they are living in the future, and which causes the difficulty. However, as we said, they are living in the future. This means that we are all headed there. This means that naturally their own energies will become more and more compatible with their environment. So our advice would be to the ones surrounding those sensitive little beings, and make sure that you treat them with love and patience and assurance. Make sure you help them feel loved and protected and accepted the way they are, as many of them have a hard time conciliating what they think they know inside and what they're being told or seeing on the outside.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tony. Paul, go ahead. Okay, and
we struggle with the notion of dark energy somehow being productive or positive in some way. And anyway, it creates a lot of conflict, and just this notion that it's very difficult to reconcile the two, kind of square the circle. So I guess the question, just a little further. Some people kind of go through the work of, and I'll just kind of mention the Dalai Lama as an example. Reading his book, I know that he spends, I think it's like 4 hours a day in meditation. Really empathizing with the dark energy, with the suffering of humanity, and really gets into it. Doesn't just recognize it on a intellectual basis, and prefers to kind of stay in the clouds, in the light energy. And then there's others, and I think even collectives, that choose to remain in the light energy and not be present in the lower energies. So I kind of see these two different camps, either kind of going through that work and, feeling both sides, and then, a camp that just stays in the light. Uh, so I'm not saying that there's necessarily a moral difference between the two, but I would presume there's some kind of maybe a outcome or something that would be different between the two. So I'm trying to kind of get my head around that.
So you're pointing out two camps. However, we will say they're not two camps, there are infinite numbers of camps. And different people and different individuals hold different roles. So if you're talking about the Dalai Lama going into the suffering of humanity, this is, you would say, a task of taking on the shared suffering to help it process to an able channel. Just as you can do some ancestral healing, and if you are in a able place, you can take on some suffering or unprocessed experiences and help those being processed. However, you can only do it if you reach a certain place within yourself. So this is one role. There are other roles of staying in the light and bringing more, like we do right now, bringing more with us into the light, discussing the light, amplifying the light. So this is one role. One is not better than the other. One is not superior to the other. There are just many, many roles to play in this beautiful, large game. We will allow you for any follow-up or clarifications.
Well, I appreciate the perspective. I guess yes, and I knew that it wasn't a superiority issue or a moral issue per se. That there would be if there's a difference between the two, it neither one is necessarily better than the other. But I would guess there's a contextual. I mean, there must, I would think, be some kind of difference between the two. And I guess that's what I'm trying to arrive at. Like, what's the utility of one versus the other?
We feel we have answered it. So, as we said, there are many roles and many utility. So the ones that go into the suffering, they're doing so from the perspective of the light, as we said, so they can then process some of these unprocessed emotions and thoughts and experiences for the collective or for a specific individual, for a group of individuals. So this is the role that they play. This is their function that they play. This is what the Dalai Lama do. And like we said, there are options, opportunities for you to do it in your own life if you reach that place when you can hold others' suffering and still be present in your light. And not, once you reach a certain level of awareness in your own light, of your own light, it cannot be as easily diminished or influenced. And once you reach that place, you can then choose what to do. And one of the things that you can do is help some, to a degree, others who are unable to hold that level of light or unaware of their own light. So this is one function.
So I suppose it's just using the analogy of a psychotherapist. I mean, they've got their own life that they have to, hold in balance, including their mental faculties themselves. But then they're also trying to help people overcome, very dark matters. So
Exactly.
So I guess there is a balance there.
The good therapist.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Cynthia, go ahead.
Hello, it is so wonderful to speak with you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
You as well.
So I've been working with another member of our group, Gina, and we've been doing something called biofield tuning. And we worked with you at the beginning with field tuning. And over the last 6 to 8 months that I've been doing this with her, I've started to notice for myself that tones, I called it playing with music, but especially when I was by myself, just tones. I just start making tones. And then more recently, it started getting to the point where, like, if I'm with people and we're having, say, a vulnerable conversation or something like that, I'll find myself just making tones and people will ask me, what are you doing? And up until this point, I've kind of just been like, I don't know, this tone needs to be in the room. I can just feel it. So I'm doing it. And I've been very well accepted with it, but I was just wondering, can you expand on this? Is this like field tuning? Am I just bringing in light or offering healing, or
Yes.
if
So
you could please expand?
first of all, because you've been practicing it and exploring it for several months, what happens is that your awareness of it increases. So you start being aware of more subtle fluctuations of the energy, of the field, right? Now, making sounds or tones is producing a frequency. You are producing a wave when you are making a sound and you are sending it into your environment. So you are impacting the physical, as you call, biofield, by producing those sounds. So it's just like color therapy. Different colors affect a different way. It's the same with sounds and tones. Those tones are actual frequencies that are being sent out. So yes, what you are doing is impacting the situation, even on a physical level, however, with a tone. So maybe if you used words, it's another aspect to inflict a change. So speaking to a person appeals to a certain aspect of them, usually the more left brain, their mind. However, making tones, we would say, reaches a different part of them. And it's just one more way to make a difference. So you are affecting them from different facets, different fractals, if this makes sense.
It does, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cynthia. Quick question from the chat. Couple of questions actually. Alana is asking, have angels ever, or archangels ever, incarnated into the physical earth plane?
We will say that angels, well, incarnate, the word incarnate is a little problematic. We will say that angelic forces walk the earth on a regular basis, and they come in and out, they come and go as needed for specific situations, as they have the ability to take a human form just like that and make it disappear just like that. So they do come and interact with humans and sometimes even animals on, we would say, a regular basis. So they do come into this world physically. Now, you asked about incarnation, and we are actually receiving information that indeed there have been times in your human history, where we would say certain humans were born with certain percentage of angelic essence. It is quite difficult to put into words, but this has happened. It is unusual, and therefore these individuals have had unusual lives. We're debating whether we should mention a name or not, but we'll give you an example of Elijah from the Bible. When he was incarnated, since you asked about incarnation, angelic essence incarnated into his physical body, physical essence as well. So yes, it has happened. However, it is quite rare, as most of the interaction happens through materialization rather than incarnation.
I see. Awesome. Just to quickly check, how's the channel doing? Or can we go for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yvette also was asking in the chat. It seems like here feminine always has a masculine counterpart. Do the Hathors have a masculine counterpart energy? And could you talk about the functions of this?
Yes, this is a very good question. It's a little complicated, but we will say yes, we have a masculine counterpart. But you could say that we operate separately but parallel. So by the nature of our essence, we're operating in parallel. But we will say that our masculine aspect is of the divine masculine. So it is not the same masculinity that has been ruling the earth. This part of us is actually connected to certain archangel energy, our masculine counterpart, and is operating in parallel towards the same goal, but in different pathways. So, how can we explain this better?
Could that be the Thoth energy?
This channeler is not familiar with thought energy. Let us see if we can bring out the name from our banks. We would say that no, this is a different energy.
Okay. Do you have a name for it that we could look up and perhaps connect with?
Because archangels were mentioned, we would say that the masculine archangel energy, such as Michael, would be fair to categorize as our masculine counterpart.
I see. Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to hop ahead to Kim. Kim, you had your hand up, or you had a question in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to hop in and ask that.
Yeah, I can real quick. I recently became aware of a planet named Ziwa, might be Ziva. Interesting, as I tried to do research on it, I found a book that somebody had written, a fiction book from Ziwa, of someone who came from that planet. So I thought, interesting, because it seems like it's a memory. Can you speak any information to this planet and a civilization, just anything about that might reside on it?
Unless you have a way to identify the planet in a way that we would identify it, we cannot speak about its specific nature. However, we will say that many books and accounts were written in your civilization as either works of fiction to begin with, or works that were not accepted as valid and then were presented as fiction. And this has happened with both, as we said, intentional conscious memories, but also sub-unconscious memories, when people thought they were making things up and were actually tapping into truths that were buried within themselves that they were not yet able to accept as realities.
Perfect. That's how I felt that identifying the book without any other support. I'd never heard of it. So it kind of was what I resonated with.
It's very common. Yes, it's very common for information to come through this way, as the area of art allows people to express themselves without penalty. If a work is conceived as fiction, the person can allow many things that they would not allow otherwise. So it opens a gate to memories and knowledge and insights from higher realms. And many people are not aware of it.
Thank you so very much for taking the question.
Of course.
Much love.
Thanks, Kim. And we'll do the final question here with Lisa. Go ahead.
Hello, hi, thank you so much for being with us. I was wondering if you could share with us ways that we can cultivate our feminine energy.
Yes, what a wonderful question. So of course, we have to start by saying that it's different for every person as you are in different starting points. However, there are certain that can definitely further help you connect to our essence. One is intention. So have the intention of having the divine feminine flow through you. Just have that intention and sit with it. And you can put beautiful feminine music, or you can just sit in silence, but just having that intention, again, of our essence run through you, merge with your own essence, is one very good way to do it. Another is to connect with the element of water. Now, this can be swimming in water. This can be looking at water. It can even be drinking water. Again, what's important is the intention. So if you are jumping into a pool with the intention to exercise and strengthen your muscles, it is not a feminine activity. Nothing is wrong with it, but it will not connect you closer to our essence. However, if you play with the water, if you move in fluid way with the water, if your intention is to connect to fluidity, as any form of fluidity is feminine in nature, then you're connecting with our essence. So masculinity has a natural tendency to control, and divine feminine essence has the ability to flow. So in your own life, should you focus on learning to go with the flow and not control situations, you are further connecting to the divine feminine flow. Another way, we'll just mention one more thing, and because we mentioned it before in this conversation, and it is the voice. Connecting to your singing voice is feminine by nature. Now, once again, if you vocalize very harsh sounds that are not feminine at all in your intention or the way you're experiencing them, then it is not connecting to the divine feminine. Shall you use your voice, this beautiful instrument, with the intention to connect to the feminine flow, it will surely do so.
Beautiful. Those are all really amazing nuggets. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. All right. Well, thank you so much, Hathors, for coming into this space and sharing your wisdom and knowledge, and just super grateful, and reminder to, especially today on Mother's Day, to connect into this divine feminine energy as much as we can in our lives. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is our privilege and our blessing to be here. We appreciate your group so very much, and the opportunity and all the curiosity and heart opening that is happening here. It is absolutely beautiful. We're wishing you all a very happy feminine day, and we will vacate this body, giving you Yafi back and sending you our love and our gratitude.
Thank you. Where can people get in touch with you? I know we have our websites and stuff. Are you going to be doing any public events that we can see you at soon?
Yeah, the public events that I'm doing are mostly in person. So I'm doing one in Sarasota, and like you mentioned, I'm doing Conscious Life Expo, but that's next February.
Right,
so the
right.
best way to get in touch with me now is to do Zoom things.
Okay.
And I channel on every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Oh,
I do a Zoom group channel. It's I'm keeping it super affordable. So it's $10 for one session or $20 for 4 sessions. It's like monthly. And you just come and ask questions just like here. It's usually a much smaller group. And the group in total is 1 hour, and that's every Friday. I also teach light language, and I do it in small groups, and that's really, really wonderful. I have I'm in a cycle right now. I'm starting another cycle May 23rd, so that's pretty soon. So that one will be Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
And it's a really wonderful way to get used to, one, being in that flow of that energy and recognize it and staying in it. And two, learning to vocalize it, learning to express it with your voice. So that's really what light language is for me. And that's what I teach.
Okay.
And of course, I do individual sessions too. So my website is yafichanneling.com. There you have my number, you have my email, and feel free to be in touch.
So awesome. Thank you so much for coming in today.